Welcome to Psychologically Speaking with me, Leila. This is a podcast and blog all about human behaviour weaving together fascinating research, insights and experiences. I'll share a psychologist's take on how the spaces we live and work in shape who we are. This year, we'll delve into the fascinating gap between intentions and actions, a liminal space where plans meet spontaneity and explore what it reveals about our identity. Some snails can hibernate for up to 3 years. I don't know why I know this random fact, but it was my immediate thought when I found a collection of snails stuck, or perhaps more accurately, suctioned against the bottom of a brick wall in the garden. I hoped I hadn't disturbed them too much from their slumber as I yanked away the rotten fence panel that had perished under the weight of overgrown ivy. This led me to a train of thought about hibernation, the popularity of the book Wintering by Catherine May, and the possibility that my enthusiasm for New Year, with its promise of fresh starts and ambitious goals, might be out of sync with at least half of the population. Then, in an Alanis Morissette kind of way, I wondered, well, isn't this ironic? Because two of the main reasons that people fail to achieve their goals and resolutions, according to a recent study, aren't due to the need for mastery or attending a course, delegating life admin or automating workflows. Instead, the culprits are failing to start, hello procrastination, and getting distracted by social media. Speaking of which, I love online spaces and communities. Before we all nod in agreement that social media is indeed a terrible thief of time, let's get some psychological perspective, because research suggests that we spend an estimated 30 to 50% of our time distracted. Academic papers refer to this as spontaneous off-task thoughts. Case in point, I drifted into thoughts about snails in hibernation, followed by a flicker of self-doubt in a mindful moment while enthusiastically destroying that fence panel. We don't need social media to distract us, per se, but in the absence of pulling down fence panels or staring at garden walls, I guess social media fills the gap with a feed of thoughts we never knew we needed. And the important thing here is that I caught that small dose of self-doubt and turned it into curiosity. While clearing out the greenhouse for its annual washdown, and yes, I know I sound like a diligent gardener at this point, but let's be clear, last year I neglected the greenhouse entirely. It rewilded itself all the way to the glass roof, leaving a terrible mess. So despite the frame being older than me, with seals and clips deteriorating faster than I can replace them, fresh tomatoes are absolutely worth it. Greenhouses are expensive to replace. My advice is wash yours down regularly. So because of my erratic gardening style, I noticed bulbs with green shoots poking through. And naturally, I have no idea what they are. Is it too early for daffodils? Tomatoes, daffodils and weeds are probably the only things I consistently grow well. It was the nudge, though, that I needed to remember that hibernation is not just a season, but a cycle. So those snails were snoozing and the bulb had woken up. In fact, I'm pretty sure I do more autumning than wintering. I aced sitting on the sofa binge-watching Grey's Anatomy for an impressive amount of time last year as the silver birch leaves fell outside my window. Chances are, unless you're an actual snail, you'll experience spontaneous thoughts no matter what personal season you're in right now. And this includes drifting into daydreams and creative thinking. Spontaneous off-task thoughts are normal most of the time, but they can turn into negative things too, because excessive rumination or worry can hold us back by shifting our attention away from the here and now. And psychologists are fascinated by attention, particularly when it affects our cognitive performance, like being, distracted while driving. Increasingly, we're looking at individual differences in attention, notably ADHD, and how it relates to spontaneous off-task thoughts in adaptive and its maladaptive forms. Now, based on podcast feedback, I know many of my listeners resonate with ADHD, so I'll summarise some thoughts on that. One key area of interest is the default mode network, and that's the DMN for short. This isn't a single brain area, but it's actually a collection of regions thought to be involved in memory, planning for the future, and how we draw things to conclusions. When we're not focused on a task, this default mode network defaults to our internal thought processes. So the DMN was discovered in the late 90s using PET scanning. That's where they put a radioactive tracer and inject it into a vein, and the scanner then tracks its movement through the body. We can't do that on a large scale across the whole population, so I think there's some caution when we're looking at certain studies that have used different types of experiments. But what scientists were able to observe is a decreased blood flow during active tasks that required that kind of focus, that cognitive control, compared to, passive viewing of stimulus. Some researchers theorise that hyperactivation then, or dysfunction of the default mode network, contributes to attention lapses in people with ADHD. However, studying real life or real time distraction or spontaneous off-task thoughts is challenging. If you think about experiments, they're typically measuring attention to tasks in group settings rather than individual. And are they always looking at things like real life behaviour or real world behaviour? I like the way that clinical psychologist Dr. Naomi Fisher cautions against us labelling brains as types. And evidence shows that brains vary across the population and can change. I've linked to her post on LinkedIn and also her book in the show notes. She's got some different views around some of the popular things we will see around neurodiversity. There are also benefits to spontaneous thought, though. So historically, it's been associated with creativity and idea generation. Psychologists at Princeton University suggest it supports memory consolidation through our episodic memory replay. So that's when we replay our past events in our mind. And this may optimise memory and goal pursuit. So they think that because in a recent study they explored whether those event memories, those episodic memories, were prioritised during spontaneous thought. And participants engaged in a think aloud task. So they were either speaking or typing their thoughts as free flow. And they also completed a second study, which was to look at word retrieval tasks. And they were testing a motivational theory here of what we call current concerns. So they were interested because they found that when current thoughts no longer provided enough episodic details or event memory detail, the mind shifted to a new topic. So from this, they then concluded that that probably helps us to prepare for goal-directed action. And what I've taken from this and from the research is that our minds naturally default to inner thought processes, and spontaneous thinking is no bad thing under normal circumstances. Mind wandering likely plays into procrastination, but it can also spark creativity. So staring at snails caused me to doubt myself briefly, but it also nudged me towards the idea that not everyone shares my enthusiasm for goal setting. My advice? Keep drifting, because not all distractions are bad. They may even help with the creative pursuit of your New Year's resolutions. Spontaneity might just be the secret sauce. So build time for daydreaming into your planning. I make no apologies for being industrious in the new year. As a psychologist and coach, I find fresh thoughts and creative goals inspiring, obviously. If that isn't you, I hope you enjoyed my erratic gardening tale. Perhaps you started to drift off when I mentioned brain networks, and if so, I hope that those spontaneous thoughts brought you joy and helped you to nip any negative rumination in the bud. For those interested, I've cited several sources in today's podcast and blog. You can access the written blog on Substack, complete with research article links. I prioritise putting in free open access articles wherever possible. And if you're new to reading academic journals, start with the abstract because it summarises the research context, methodology and the outcomes. That's it for today. Coming up, I'll be delving into accountability, why and how it exactly works, plus a book review of neurodivergent coaching and what I see as potential in the coaching space. Don't forget to rate and review and share the podcast. Your feedback really helps independent podcasters like me get heard by a wider audience.